अस्सलाम वालेकुम। आज की जो हमारी वीडियो है वो है फेथ ऑफ पायरुविक एसिड अंडर हाइपोक्सिया एंड अल्फा हाइपोक्सिया। What is mean by hypoxia and alpha hypoxia? Hypoxia mean low oxygen condition. For example, when we are doing exercise, when we are in stress, then our body can't then our body breathe fastly, so therefore our cell could not receive enough amount of oxygen, so therefore our body has low oxygen. So this condition is called as hypoxia, while on the other hand alpha hypoxia is called when we have normal state, when we have normal oxygen concentration in our blood cells in our body. In normal and resting condition, these two kinds of things occur, and these are occur in normal state. Okay, then we discuss that what changes occur in our stress or in our exercise condition, and what is the difference which is created in both these conditions. First of all, in normal state, our glucose combined with NADH and H positive ion in presence of in excess of oxygen, and then two pyruvic acid molecules and one NADH positive is formed. Now, the end products of glycolysis in normal and the resting condition will be 2 ATP and 2 NADH and H positive ions. Now, we proceed to the stress and exercise condition. In stress and exercise condition, first step is same, that glucose combined with NADH and H positive proton to get 2 pyruvic acid and 1 NADH positive. Now, the extra thing that happened in stress or exercise state is that two pyruvic acid molecule again combined with one NADH molecule in presence of an enzyme which called as lactate dehydrogenate. It is abbreviated as LDH to form two lactic acid and one NADH positive. This process, this reaction take place in low amount of oxygen, mean hypoxia state. Now, from where this NADH came from? It came from the end product of glycolysis. In low oxygen state, glycolysis produce 2 ATP but 1 NADH. In normal state, glycolysis end products include 2 ATP and 2 NADH. But in stress state, only 1 NADH is produced and this one NADH is used in pyruvic acid to produce two lactic acid molecules, and this reaction is reversible, that it can be reversed back, that lactic acid again combined with NADH positive to give two molecules of pyruvic acid and one NADH. So the reversal of this reaction can be occur by an enzyme which is secreted by our smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, and means that we need an enzyme from the smooth endoplasmic reticulum which combined with the two molecules of lactic acid and one NADH positive to give back two molecules of pyruvic acid and one NADH and H positive ion. Now we further proceed that the step of glycolysis is not affected by hypoxia and alpha hypoxia state, means that the glycolysis has 10 steps, and the 10th step of glycolysis is not affected by the presence or the absence of oxygen. However, the end products of glycolysis are affected or changed, because we see in normal state of oxygen glycolysis end products includes 2 ATP and 2 NADH molecules, but in low oxygen state, glycolysis end products change. It produces only 2 ATP molecules and the 1 NADH molecule. So therefore, end products of glycolysis affected, but or 10 step of glycolysis are not affected at all. Now we study the what is the fate of lactic acid in normal amount of oxygen and in low amount of oxygen. In normal condition or in normal oxygen supply, lactic acid produced in small amount by our brain cells, by our red blood cell and by our skin. ठीक है, normally our body cannot produce lactic acid, but only small amount of lactic acid produced by three kind of cells, which are brain cell, our skin cells and our red BC. Okay, now if we have low amount of oxygen, for example we are doing exercise, we are in stress, then lactic acid concentration in our body increases, lactic acid concentration in our blood increases. Then how this lactic acid works and how it produce more. First of all, in exercise state or in stress state, our muscle fatigue mean the pain occur in our muscles. Therefore, the concentration of lactic acid in our muscles increases. So therefore, permeability of muscles increases. So therefore, the fluid inside the muscles increases intake and the fluid move outside to the intestinal fluid and it cause interstitial edema. This is a disease. In very excess of lactic acid this disease occur, and this high concentration of lactic acid can cause leakage of red blood cells. So 20 to 30% of our lactic acid oxidized by a cycle which called as citric cycle. Okay, 20 to 30% of our lactic acid is oxidized in our body because our body can't bear too much amount of lactic acid, while the 70% of lactic acid go to the liver. And how 70% of lactic acid is handled by our liver, which is given further, that this 70% of lactic acid go to the liver cell, and liver cell cause its glucogenesis. It convert lactic acid into the glucose. Glucogenesis means production of glucose. Liver cell has ability to convert lactic acid into the glucose. So lactic acid converted into the glucose, and this glucose move to the blood. From blood it goes to the muscles again. In muscles, glucose is already present, so glucose and glucose combine to give glycogen. Now this glycogen breakdown again goes to the liver and blood, and this liver again convert it into the blood glucose. So in this way our liver cell convert lactic acid into the glucose, and then this glucose goes to the muscle, and this muscle again combine it as a glycogen, and this glycogen again goes to the liver and again converted into the blood sugar. And this whole cycle is called as Cori cycle. So we have two cycles through which the lactic acid is breakdown or lactic acid passed. First of all is 20 to 30% lactic acid is overcome by a cycle which is called as citric cycle, while the 70% of lactic acid undergo a cycle which is called as Cori cycle. And Cori cycle is given name by a scientist by which whose name is Cori. Now what is the importance of pyruvic acid? So in normal state the pyruvic acid has NADH positive. Okay, we have discussed here that in normal state NADH is formed. Okay, so this NADH oxidize undergo oxidation in high oxygen state to give NADH positive, while in the stress state we see that we have one NADH. So this one NADH in stress state in low oxygen state converted into the NADH positive. This NADH positive used in glycolysis step. We need NADH positive, so it goes there in the it used in the glycolysis process. For the continuous glycolysis process we need this at high concentration of oxygen. This NADH is converted into the NADH, and this NADH is again converted into the NADH positive, while in low oxygen state NADH positive is converted into NADH positive. Okay, I hope that you will understand this lecture. Stay tuned. Allah Hafiz.